and he favored him. Okay, so right from the beginning, he favored him. And the point I want to make here is that, first of all, that God favors his children. If you're a child of God, everyone's a child of God, excuse me. Everyone's a child of God. You know, whether you give your life to him or not, he loves you and he likes you. That's why he died for everybody. But right from the beginning, he favors you. From the beginning, when you were born, God likes you. That's the point I want to make here. From the beginning, you were special to him, enough that he favors you. And we're going to get into more of what that favor looks like. But that's the point I wanted to make here, that he likes you from the get-go. All right? So I guess what I want to say is there's not a lot you have to do to earn it. It's already there for you to access. All right, now moving on with the story of Joseph to kind of what happens next, not directly next, but the next point that I want to get to. Now, Joseph wasn't just favored by Israel or Jacob. He was favored by God in a special way. Okay, to each of us, God gives certain things, and to Joseph, God spoke to him through dreams and gave him the ability to interpret those dreams. And he was really special for what he did. And Joseph would get these dreams about how his brothers were going to bow down to him, and he would tell his dad because God was speaking to him. And his brothers didn't like that. Okay, his brothers didn't like that. And if you kind of see in the picture, I don't know, but what they ended up doing, they were working in a field, and Jacob sent Joseph out to meet them, and the brothers made this plot, stuck him in a hole, right? And then we're going to kill him until one of his brothers said, no, don't kill him. And then some travelers came by, some slave owners, I guess, came by and purchased Joseph. And then they lied to his dad saying, hey, Joseph died, but really they sold him into slavery. And this was the first kind of moment in Joseph's life when, everything kind of hit the fan. And it was like, what's going on? He was favored by God, but all of a sudden he was sold into slavery. So he was sold into slavery by his brothers. All right, and what I wanted to make the point here was that living in God's favor isn't always easy. It's not always easy. Things can happen. Now, have you ever wondered, and a lot of people, especially when I was in college, especially when I was taking philosophy, for whatever reason, everyone attacked God in my philosophy class, even though they were saying, we're not talking about your God, we're talking about God. Okay, well, you use the word God, you're not saying Allah, or, you're using God, and they used to get so defensive. But they used to bash God in the way of not everything is good, right? Not everything's good in our lives. Bad things happen. And the question, I guess, is sometimes is why, right? I don't believe that God purposely plans bad things to happen for you, okay? The thing is, God likes you, right? He favors you from the moment you were born. He likes you. And what happens when you see someone favored? And in the story of Joseph, we see that. Jacob favored Joseph. How did the brothers react to that? What was their feelings? Jealousy. Have you ever seen someone, like maybe a friend of yours or a family member, and they're like, hey, I just got this brand new car, brand new blah, blah. Some of you might be happy. Some of you might be like, wish I had that new car. Or they get a new job, or they get a nice house, and you feel jealous sometimes, because when blessing falls, it's funny. When blessing falls on somebody, everybody else hates it. Not all the time, but when you're fleshly, when you are living from the flesh, you hate it. You can't stand it when good things happen to good people. I always laugh at a certain comedian because he says that about Hispanic people. He says, we love to see other people suffer. We like to see when bad things happen to people. The other day, me and my wife were on the road, and so there's a car, and he's going real slow, and he looks like he's going to stop. The light's yellow, but then he keeps going, and another car makes a left turn. And she does what most people do, because it's like something's about to happen. I was like this. Oh, man, they almost hit. Like, I was waiting for it to happen. I mean, it wasn't going to be a fatal. They were going slow. But sometimes you just, the one guy was driving a BMW. So sometimes it's like, oh, man, that guy almost had the car insurance. But God's favor, when you live in God's favor, is not always easy. Why? Because other people hate it. And those other people are driven by a hate that comes from one specific person, okay? And that is Satan, the enemy. From the beginning, when God created Adam and Eve, mankind, he favored them. He said, I make you in my image. You are like me. And God walked with him and talked with him, and he gave them everything. You will, govern all of this. And who messed that up? It wasn't, the other people. There was no other people. It wasn't God. God didn't say, here, eat this tree. Ah, sucker. It was Satan. Satan was the one that messed it up. And it's Satan in the world that tries to mess things up through people, through other people that hate when good things happen to you. And that's why things aren't always easy. It wasn't that God said, Joseph, I love you. I'm going to make you go through some bad things. No, God loves him and wants the best for him. It's people, it's Satan through the world that messes things up. But God can take that and turn that around. So we shouldn't look at bad things and trials and tests as bad, because God can turn that around for you. How he can through those, he makes your faith grow. Through those, you become a stronger person. Through those, you can learn more about God. Through those, blessings can come, things that you wouldn't even have thought might enter into your life. You see that in the Bible. People who went through hard things, and then when they were faithful, they came out of it. God just blessed them a ridiculous amount. So the point here is not always going to be easy. Living in God's favor is not always going to be easy, but it's worth it if you stick to it. As long as you maintain in the favor by living right with God, in the favor, it's all going to work out. And we're going to get to that. So let's go back to the story. So at this moment in time, Joseph's in slavery. Doesn't know where he is, where he's going, what's going to happen. And later on, the slaves make it into Egypt. And Potiphar, who was a high official in the government, ends up buying Joseph. So Joseph ends up becoming a slave for a person, and he's in the house. And what happens in the story? Do you remember what happens as Joseph is in the house? As Joseph's he's a slave. He ends up becoming second in command of all of Potiphar's things, right? He goes from being a little slave to Potiphar literally saying, everything that's mine you can have, except my wife, don't touch her. Everything else in my life you can have. And it's yours to control. When I leave, to do business and all that, my house, not my cars, but, think of it in today's term, my cars, my house, everything that's mine is yours. You are second in command. How did that happen? Because God favored Joseph. Even though Joseph was going through all this stuff, Joseph still loved God. He never cursed him. He never denied him. He still lived for him. He still loved him. He did everything with a good heart, everything he was asked to do. Life wasn't fair for him at all, but he still did it, and God honored that and gave him favor and blessed him. So what does favor do? And I think I put it here. So what does favor do? Or one way that God's favor looks like, it brings blessing. It brings success. It brings victory to your life. If you live in God's favor, if you don't complain, if you do things with a good heart, and if you do things for others, and even though things aren't going your way, you continue to help other people, and you continue to serve other people, and you continue to do, what your boss asks you to do, and so on, God will favor you. You might not be in a good place right now, but eventually you'll get there. Okay? And that's what happened. He's in a horrible position in slavery, and he became second in command in his slave owner's house, which is a big deal. You know what happens next? Joseph's roller coaster life story. Potiphar's wife wasn't happy, okay? She's looking at this guy and thinking, he's kind of cute. My husband's away, and I think I would like to get with him. And she tries to manipulate him and seduce him. And you know what Joseph does? He runs out of the house. He runs, he just takes off from this wife. He says, no. And he does it, why? He does it because his master said, you can have everything but my wife. And he ran away because he knew it was wrong. And even though he did the right thing, Potiphar comes back, and what does his wife say? He tried to rape me. He tried to do this. She's all mad because he didn't want to be with her. He did this and that and blah, blah, blah. It looked like an episode of Jerseylicious. I don't know if you've ever seen those shows with those New Jersey girls. He did this and that and blah, blah, blah. And Potiphar came back and said, you did this, Joseph? After what I did for you, you're going to prison. And they sent him to prison. That's ridiculous. Imagine if that was you. It's like, I already went to prison, man. Come on. It's like, why? I didn't do these things. She's lying. But how's Potiphar going to believe that? It's just the way the story happened. Again, when you're living in God's favor, you don't always understand what's going on. It's not always easy. It's not always going to be a cakewalk. Not because that's the way God intended it and wanted it to happen. It's the way that the world works.